Constitution Amendment Bill number 2 has passed in the lower house of Parliament, where MPs such as Joseph Chinotimba and Job Sikala sit. After this, it moves to the upper house, where senators such as Douglas Mwonzora and Monica Mchangwa sit. Once a bill passes through both houses, attaining 2/3 of the vote, it is assented to the office of the president and awaits his signature. This is how laws are passed in Zimbabwe. It has been one of the biggest issues of debate in political circles over the past week. After 2013, there were up to 400 pieces of legislation that needed to be aligned with the new constitution. Since then, the General Laws Amendment Bill number 1 changed 125 laws. The General Laws Amendment Bill number 2 provides changes for 63 other laws. All this is being done by the Inter-Ministerial Task Force on the alignment of legislation to the Constitution. Less than 50 pieces of legislation are still to be aligned. The ruling party, ZANU-PF, with the 2/3 majority in Parliament, has been given the mandate by voters and is executing that mandate. Is this what parliamentary democracy looks like? In Parliament, 191 MPs voted for the amendment, 22 voted against it. Some MDC-T and MDC-A MPs voted for the amendment. Other MDC-T MPs voted against it. Now, why the split? Senator Douglas Mwonzora, president of the MDC-T, was one of the 3 COPAC chairpersons, the team responsible for the 2013 new draft constitution. Celebrations were held for it, with the late, great Oliver Samanyanga Mtukudzi and former President RGM, Joyce Mujuru, and the late Morgan Tsvangirai in unison. The COPAC chairpersons, the GPA negotiators, and the GNU principals all agreed upon this new national constitution. Here we are, barely 10 years later, amending and adjusting and cutting and editing. In voting for or against this bill, it is either total acceptance of the bill or total rejection of the same. So, some voted in favor of it because there were more laws they support than oppose, while others are against amendments, arguing that we are tearing up a constitution that is not even 10 years old. But what exactly is this bill, and what does it propose? Here are just some of the many changes that the bill proposes to make. Removal of the running mate clause. From 2023, every presidential candidate would have been required to select a running mate, kind of like what they do in the US. The amendment changes this. We will continue with the current setup where only the president gets elected and then he appoints his or her VPs. The women's quota in the current constitution, women have a quota of 60 seats in parliament. This was going to end in 2023. The amendment says no, this quota must carry on. The youth quota, we will now have a quota of 10 seats. Currently, the president can only pick 5 ministers from outside parliament. The amendment increases this number to 7 ministers. This has been a hot one. Then the judges. The change to this is that there will be no longer public interviews for judges when promotions arise as before. The Judicial Services Commission, or JSC, will nominate candidates and present them to the president for selection. Still on judges, today judges must retire when they reach the age of 70 years. With the amendment, if they do reach 70, they can get their term of office extended 1 year at a time, as long as they are fit for office. Now let's get into dialogue and link these changes to reality. All right, President of the MDC-T, welcome, Douglas Mwonzora. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you very much for inviting me after a very long time. Yes. I'm very happy.
You said in your opening remark that it is a bill that was proposed by the ruling party, but has been supported, we can correct, by half of your party. Yes. So we can't really say it's the ruling party that's pushing for this, because it's in favor by opposition parties as well.
Yes, the dilemma that the MPs faced was that this bill had 6 parts. The first one is a clause that dealt with the running mate. Yes. The second
which
one,
you don't want.
No, I don't.
Why is that?
Well, because when we did the running mate clause, it was an attempt to resolve the succession issue. Once the president leaves the scene, there must not be any debate on who takes over. If it is left to chance, then you have the possibility of civil unrest, bloodbaths, and so on. So we wanted to settle that question.
Why didn't you push for this in 2013? Because I suspect that if it had been pushed that long ago, the political landscape would look very different now.
Of course.
Because we have two former presidents who both passed on without having announced a successor.
Indeed. Unfortunately, it was one of the most contentious clauses during the constitution-making process. ZANU-PF did not want it. I think Mr. Mugabe didn't want to settle the succession issues in a definite manner as a way of control of the factions within the party. I'm not so sure whether President Changrai's attitude was the same.
Well, his successor would have been at the time Madame Coupe, correct?
Yes.
And the likes of yourselves would never have stood for that. So wouldn't it be amiss to say only ZANU-PF didn't want it?
We wouldn't have minded. We don't mind. I mean, we don't mind Madame Coupe being a successor. I mean, if that is what the law would be saying. And the beauty of the running mate clause is that the president announces the deputy president before elections.
Correct.
So that the deputy president becomes an election issue.
Correct.
It vaccinates the people against the choice of useless vice presidents. And it encourages the presidential candidates to look for quality vice presidents. Right. And the nation benefits. Right. That was the logic.
Yes. Just like the American system, right?
The American system, the Malawian system, and you saw the Tanzanian system. So for us, that was the logic. It was logical. It was sensible. And that is why we are against the amendment of the running mate clause. We think that the amendment of the running mate clause is simply to deal with the internal power dynamics within ZANU-PF. And we think that it is wrong for ZANU-PF to try to resolve its internal issues via a national constitution.
Is this a bill that favors only the ruling party, as you seem to emphasize? But surely it's something that any presidential candidate, such as yourself, can then have power to choose their running mate and enter an election in a way where, as you said, the electorate can choose both their president and the vice president.
Yes, I would favor a situation where I choose a running mate, which is what the current law was saying, that the president chooses his running mate and presents that running mate to the electorate. That would force me to choose somebody acceptable to the electorate. And I would favor that. Now, what the amendment now does is that it does away with that. So you go into an election only knowing who the president or the potential president is going to be. But you don't know who he is
going to appoint.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And I think that is wrong. And that's why I am against the amendment of the running mate clause. There is also a clause that deals with the appointment of the judges. And in the previous constitution, in the current law, we had said that for judges to be appointed in the Supreme Court, in the High Court, they have to go through interviews. What this amendment does is that it removes the need to do interviews for senior judges, judges passing the High Court, into the Supreme Court, into the Constitutional Court. It says there's no need, among other things, says there's no need of an interview. I think it is wrong again.
But you support the other four?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you're okay with the youth quota, you're okay with the women's quota, because especially with women, we need to look at that representation because it is important. They were going to end the women's quota at 2023, right? Now it's been extended beyond, 2023. Do you think that this is something women will even fulfill? Because even now we were barely struggling to meet it.
Well, Rove, I think that the representation of women in Zimbabwe in all the institutions leaves a lot to be desired. And our view was that if we put a women's quota, we guarantee a certain minimum representation of women in parliament. Right. And for us, it was a positive move towards equal representation of women. What leaving things as they are would have entailed is that come 2023, automatically you have 60 women out of parliament. What this amendment does is that it prolongs the women's quota. We think that given the current political situation, the women right now still need that political or legal incubation where they are guaranteed a certain number of seats, certain threshold. Unfortunately, as things stand, there is no substitute to the 60 seats. The opponents of the amendment are ignoring that fact, that there is no legislation for 50-50, which guarantees women representation. It is not there. Right. Now, if we remove the 60 seats, we are removing the representation for women, and I think it is wrong. Similarly, the youth, they are not represented as a demographic group. What this amendment does is that it introduces 10 youths into parliament. Right. Our belief as the MDC is that youths are not leaders of tomorrow. They are leaders of today.
Do you not think 10 is too few?
Well, I actually think so. Yeah. But having 10 is an incremental gain. We expect the youths to make noise.
Enter anyway.
Yes, and to make noise as well for their representation.
So you actually have no hard feelings against those members of your own party who voted for the bill?
I perfectly understand them. Okay. I perfectly understand them. This bill is coming to the Senate. Fortunately, where I sit, together with two more senior leaders, Morgan Komichi and Engineer Mzuri. And we have an opportunity of negotiating those aspects of the bill that we have objections to. The bill goes through the same stages in the Senate.
As it did in the lower house.
Yes.
Right.
So we will go to the committee stage where we are going to be debating clause by clause. And we intend to pay more attention to that stage. Right. Unfortunately, in the National Assembly, some of the MPs making noise now boycotted the committee stage.
I see.
And lost an opportunity of impugning those clauses.
The technicalities. And now you'll take over in the Senate to do that.
That's correct.
Okay, so why are people accusing you of, being a menace in all of this? And saying that you are, part of this and that you're acting like, you're against ZANU-PF. Meanwhile, you're very much in cahoots with what they're doing and that your party has supported this bill.
Well, you see, there is politics at play in Zimbabwe, and unfortunately, there is politics of hate, propaganda, polarization, and so on. Anything that Douglas Mwonzora does has to be made to look as horrible as possible. I understand that. And I understand my opponents because I understand myself. And I understand what my opponents are up against. So I don't really worry about what they do. But they are wrong. And I've seen scholars who ought to know parliamentary procedure. I have seen politicians who ought to know that I don't sit in the National Assembly, accusing me of voting in the National Assembly.
Where you don't even sit in the lower house.
Where I don't even sit. And I have seen them preempting what I am going to vote for when it comes to the Senate. Despite that, before the voting, I was interviewed by the ZBC. I think it was Mr. Ruvheneko. Right. And I explained this, that the MDC is against the 2 clauses. But regarding the 4 clauses, it is supporting them.
We do see your movements, Mr. Mwonzora, and we're all trying to understand, where you are, because there has been a lot of movement across the floor politically with players, and then now you not being part of Pollard, but very supportive of the new dispensation in many ways, where you have traveled with the president on a number of occasions. Recently, you just accompanied him when he got his 2nd vaccine. Tell us about that.
We have adopted a new politics as the MDC-T, and we are trying to remove the politics of hate, rancor, acrimony, violence, and intolerance, and replace it with the politics of rational disputation and tolerance. And I can oppose the president without being horrible to him, without being rude to him. I can be an effective opposition leader without having to hate anybody. So this is the politics we want to adopt. Now, COVID-19 is a national and international menace which must not be politicized. We were the first political party to talk about the vaccine. We were the first political party to have a leader vaccinated.
Are you insinuating that the vaccines the idea of the vaccines was propelled by you?
Well, what I know is that I spoke about it first.
What do you mean first? On which fora?
Yes, I actually recorded a video, Ruve, at the commencement of I think the second lockdown in January.
Right.
Yes, I had just been elected president. So I did a video where I made 4 demands. That the government must make available protective wear like masks, yes, free of charge to the poor. That treatment for the poor must be free, and that in the unfortunate event of death, the funeral costs must be borne by the government, and that the government must procure vaccines, that it must administer free. Those were the demands that we made in that video.
But it sounds like you're saying as if the vaccines wouldn't have come had you not, or that you were the first to say it, because the vaccines conversation was going on globally, for months and months.
Yes.
And I'm sure the Ministry of Health under government already had plans to procure vaccines.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that because I said it, they were procured. Yes. I'm saying I said it showed that is what I supported.
Right.
That is what I was advocating for.
Right.
So there was, if the government was thinking the same, there was a convergence of thought there. Yeah. Now comes the invitation by the president to deal with the vaccination. Yes. I found it sensible to attend. Right. First, to show that this thing must be completely depoliticized. Number 2, to encourage members across the political divide to be vaccinated. Number 3, that it was a national event.
Who is going to be running for president? Will there be any talks of a GNU? All those things are what Zimbabweans are looking at to say, what does our landscape look like? So maybe as we conclude, if you could give us a little bit of your thoughts, foresight, sort of fast forward into 2023, what is that election going to look like?
Well, we are ready for sure for 2023. But right now, you hear people saying that we do not have support. But both the Mr. Chamisa's group and our group are doing restructuring. And if you look at the videos of those meetings, you will see that we are attracting greater numbers. So definitely we are on the ballot paper in 2023.
What will you do to win the 2023 election? What are you offering Zimbabwe?
Well, first of all, Rove, we are offering Zimbabwe a new type of politics, as I've said, that we need to sort our politics so that there is no internal disharmony. It'll be fun time.
Well, are you going to have no disharmony? For now, we ask if you don't mind, if I ask about your own home, right? Your own domestic affairs in your party with yourself and Madam Coupe, how are your relations with her? Because I ask because behind the scenes, it looks like she's attacking you, and some articles that have come out about you, the accusations that have been made about you, seem as if they're coming from her quarters. Do you believe that?
Well, I will reserve my comments on where those things are coming from, but certainly I can tell you that there are a lot of stakeholders very interested in personal destruction. For example, the G40. You have people like Hopo Chingono.
Who is the G40?
The G40 is the ZANU-PF that is not in government.
Which is who? Maybe give me an example.
ZANU-PF is divided into 2, Rove. There is ZANU-PF which is in government. There is ZANU-PF that was ousted in the coup.
Right.
And it is outside government, people like Jonathan Moyo.
Right.
Yes. And these people want to hijack the opposition
If you're saying that the G40 is attacking you, who else do you think is attacking you?
Of course, my opponents within the opposition, they are doing that.
Is this under Nelson Chamisa?
Of course.
Right.
Of course, it's no secret. The people attacking me are people without a plan. They are people without strategy. And I come with my group with a definite strategy, which is working. Instead of forming their own strategies, they attack those who have strategy. It's like pull him down.
But what is your strategy? I asked you moments ago, what are you offering?
Our strategy, on that score, our strategy is dialogue and tolerance.
Right.
It works. It will produce enormous results. What are we offering the people of Zimbabwe?
Yes.
We have started offering already. We want the advancement of women. We offer the advancement of the youth. In fact, we are the first party to say youths are not leaders of tomorrow, they are leaders of today. We want to offer equal opportunity to all Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe is a land rich in mineral wealth, in flora and fauna. And it can become the international, the economic hub of the African continent. We have everything we have all the ingredients to get that into
Well,
being.
this sounds like the manifesto of every party.
We want Zimbabwe reintegrated into the international community. We also want, and this is very important for us, Zimbabwe to join the Commonwealth and enjoy the benefits that are there with joining the Commonwealth.
Do you really feel that you will gain enough momentum to outshine Nelson Chamisa, to outshine President Mnangagwa?
I don't feel, I know. In fact, Ruve, I want to admit that Nelson Chamisa did very well in 2018. And we did very well in 2018. But Nelson Chamisa had a Secretary General in 2018. He had a national chairman. He had a vice president. So, putting names, he had Mr. Mwonzora with him. He had Komichi with him. He had Engineer Muzuri with him. Paulina Mpariwa with him. Tapiwa Mashakada with him. And when you see results, they are not as a result of the individual effort of the candidate. They are as a result of the effort of the institution.
100%.
And therefore, it is wrong to say that those are his efforts only. They are our efforts.
Understood.
And the people that I've just talked to you about have left him.
They're now on your team.
They are on our team. Out of the 5 members of the top echelons of the MDC-T, then only Nelson Chamisa is on his own.
Do you think you're more popular than Nelson Chamisa?
Let me tell you by way of an example of what happened within the MDC between Nelson Chamisa and myself. 2014, Nelson Chamisa, during the nomination process, had 11 nominations out of 12. I had 1 nomination out of 12. Now, if you were equating this to popularity, he had 11 elements of popularity, while I had 1 out of 12 elements of popularity. I went to win that election by almost 1,000 votes.
So what do you say about your own journey politically? Did you always aspire to sit here where you are now?
Well, the journey has been, I think I've risen to where I am on merit. I entered into the standing committee. In fact, I started as the treasurer for Nyanga North District, Nyanga North District of the MDC. And then I became secretary for local government for Manicaland province. Then I just became a member of the National Council representing members of parliament. Then I became the spokesperson of the MDC. An opportunity arose, and Nelson was leaving that position, and an opportunity arose. I was in prison. I came out of prison, and I won that election by over 1,600 votes. And Ruve, time will tell. I definitely will do better than what most people are saying. And in fact, if you look at the numbers turning to the MDC meetings, last week there was a women's assembly. It was full house. There was the youth assembly. It was full house. There were the meetings or the restructuring meetings. It was full house. We were turning away people. Now, if you look at the meetings that Charlton Wende has been having, for example, if you see them on social media, he was addressing 8 people. Of those 8, 4 were people he came with, including his driver, in Mwonzora, which is his home area.
Well, at least he's observing COVID protocol.
Yes.
Why are you having such large meetings?
No, that's why we turned people away, because we feared that we could offend the COVID rules.
If there was to be a presidential debate for 2023, who would you share the stage with? Which candidate?
Anybody who dares. Anybody who dares. I mean, I'm open to debate anybody. Yes, about the issues then.
Sure.
Yes.
And what have you thought, in closing, have you thought of the leadership of President Mnangagwa so far, these 3 years?
One thing I can give to the Mnangagwa government is that I think compared to the previous, the levels of violence, I think they've gone down very, very much significantly. And that also they have been open to dialogue, I think. And that for me is the most important thing. What they are planning for the economy and so on is their issue, but that they are open to discussion, they are open to dialogue, they are open to being influenced by us. Then we should take.
Are you open to being influenced by them? Is it mutual?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, to be honest, Ruve, I am a genuinely opposition person. I am the longest serving opposition person in Zimbabwe right now, having started in 1988, and so on, and joining hands with my colleagues and so on.
So I guess that is a good place to even answer that question as yourself, with all those years of experience, right, as opposition, to say, has the new dispensation improved from the old?
I think slightly. In some aspects, yes, you see improvement. For example, the issues of the mass arrests, for example. Yes, there are still arrests going on, but the scale has gone down. The scale regarding violence, I think it has gone down. And the economy is bad, but it is stable. It is bad, but it is stable. And I want to see a better economy, more employment. Unemployment is probably still the same.
So you think the reforms that Professor Mthuli did bring in have helped to stabilize, like you're saying?
Yes, stabilization of the economy, not improvement of the economy. In other words, the economy has stagnated.
Plateaued.
Yeah, it has plateaued. That's my
stable,
yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we seeing parliamentary democracy in action? Ask yourself how these changes affect your life directly. Remember that the 270 members of parliament, 80 senators, and the final signature from number 1 are making these decisions based on the decision that you and I made when we voted for them into power, with the hope that they will improve our quality of life. On that note, have you registered to vote? Wakanyoresa ere kuvota. Ubalisile na ukuvota.